The continued ignorance of the left is getting out of hand as they go off on the attack of Senator Ted Cruz from Texas and his trip to Cancun. What is more important, the family dog that was left in Texas or the failed leadership of Democrats that is destroying American lives and livelihood all across the country? This is the Closet Conservative Podcast. This week we saw the continued ignorance of the left on display, and it is truly getting out of hand. The left seized on an opportunity to attack Senator Ted Cruz of Texas. Texas was hit with a massive winter storm earlier in the week that knocked out power to millions of people across the state. And there are a lot of things that caused and contributed to that besides just the winter weather, and I'm not going to go into all the details. You've probably heard all those stories by now. But if you hear the left say it, Ted Cruz was personally responsible for the power and the heat of everyone in Texas, even though he has nothing to do with the power and heat of homes across Texas. You see, the situation started when Ted Cruz and his family flew to Cancun, Mexico. They, like all the other people in Texas, were out of power. His kids were out of school, and he was on a break from Congress. So he wasn't working. His kids, they were all sitting around the house, so they decided, like many other Americans do all the time, to take off to a warmer climate. They decided to take a vacation to Cancun, Mexico. There's nothing wrong with that. He's an American and deserves the right to do that if he chooses. But the left saw that as a problem. They said that Cruz has attacked Democrats for taking vacations while their states were suffering or their cities were suffering. And yes, Ted Cruz has done that. One of the stories mentioned and talked about how Ted Cruz attacked Austin Mayor Steve Adler for going to Cabo, Mexico during the coronavirus pandemic. But there's a big difference here. That was a big deal with Austin Mayor Steve Adler. Cruz's situation is a bit different. Adler was issuing stay-home orders, telling people they had to stay home, that it was not safe to travel, and they should not leave their homes. He was saying, you must stay home, issuing orders mandating they do not travel, they cannot go out, stay home, live in fear of the coronavirus. Yet, Adler boarded a private jet and went to Cabo. Cruz wasn't issuing stay-home orders. He wasn't telling people they had to stay home. He wasn't ordering them to stay in the winter weather. I mean, obviously, Ted Cruz has no control over that. Unlike Adler, who was issuing orders and directives that had direct consequences on the lives of those who lived in his area, Cruz had none of that at play here. He is an elected senator in the state of Texas, but he doesn't control the state power grid. He does not control winter weather, and he does not control the utility linemen that are there to make repairs. Sure, Ted Cruz can make phone calls and make statements, but the left would have attacked him for that as well. That did not stop the attacks, though, the fact that he doesn't control any of that. They started making calls for Ted Cruz to resign, even though he has no control, no say, no power in the situation other than the fact he can make statements. And again, they would have crucified him saying that all he did was make statements. They did that with Texas Governor Greg Abbott. They said all he's doing is going on making statements instead of doing something. Well, what do you want Greg Abbott to do? Roll his wheelchair up in a lineman truck and start making repairs? There's not much he can do. But that doesn't stop the left. When Ted Cruz returned home from Cancun, in fact, he flew down Wednesday and immediately back home on Thursday. After his family made it down to Cancun, he flew back. But the left was already prepared. They had people sitting in his house or standing in his house protesting. I'm sure that these people were bussed into the area just to chant and call for his resignation as soon as he arrived back home. Now, Cruz has said that he regrets the travel. He said that it was probably a bad idea, but he also said he was trying to be a good father. Shame on him for attempting to be a good father and take care of his family as he can. Shame on him for not doing this secretly on a private jet while issuing mandates for everyone else to stay home. And shame on him for leaving the family dog at home. Yeah, that's what CNN's Chris Cuomo had an issue with. He had an issue that the family left their pet poodle at home. And there were many other people that commented about that as well. But you see, that's the very issue that's a problem here. The left wants to point fingers and try to prove a situation when they're the ones that are ignoring things in their own house. There's an old saying that talks about if you're wanting to point fingers, you better make sure you don't live in a glass house. Something along those lines. You've probably heard that statement before. And I think that applies very well in this situation here. CNN and Chris Cuomo have openly ignored the situation in New York, where Chris's brother Andrew is in a little bit of a predicament. Governor Cuomo made a decision that resulted in the deaths of thousands, yet the mainstream media and the left have no issues with that. They have no issue with forced closure, mask mandates, and forced deaths. But because Cruz left the state of Texas while he had no control over anything that was happening or taking place, that's an issue. You certainly did not see the left upset when Governor Gavin Newsom was caught on camera without his mask out socializing while he was forcing residents of the state to stay at home. You did not see the left upset with Speaker Nancy Pelosi as she was caught without a mask getting her hair done while those same salons were forced to be closed. People were forced to wear masks. Americans in the area were told they were not allowed to do the things that these elitists on the left were doing. And you certainly did not see the left upset with Governor Gretchen Whitmer, who decided to travel around the country and enjoy things in D.C., helping Joe Biden in his campaign and preparing for taking the White House. They didn't have a problem with her doing any of those things while she also was forcing the citizens of her state to stay home. Do you see the issue? Do you see the situation that should be the problem here, but it isn't? Time and again, the left wants to attack those on the right for stupid things like this Ted Cruz story. But they want to ignore the gross corruption in their own party. They don't want to talk about those things, though. They don't want to talk about the outright corruption in their own party because that's helping promote their agenda. They want to make a big issue about the family dog staying at home, but not about the thousands that were sent to an early death by the decisions of the governor in New York. They want to make an issue about how people suffered at the hands of Mother Nature, which no one but God controls. But they have no issue that Joe Biden has forced thousands of people out of their jobs with the stroke of a pen, and that he's absolutely crippling the economy. They want to complain that Ted Cruz and Greg Abbott should be out working the utility line, doing everything in their power to try to restore power, things that they have no control over. But Joe Biden has yet to be able to put together a logical plan for coronavirus vaccine distribution, other than following President Trump's highly successful plan. Time and again, the left wants to make a big deal about something that happens on the right, and each and every time, it's a play on the emotions of the American people, and it's a play simply to stimulate an emotional response. People of Texas are not suffering at the hands of Ted Cruz, but rather Mother Nature. People in New York, California, and any other Democrat-led state are suffering at the hands of their ridiculous governors, and our nation is suffering at the hands of Joe Biden. But you do not hear anyone on the left talking about that. The Closet Conservative Podcast is a production of The Liberty Loft. Copyright The Liberty Loft 2021. You can find more shows and information on our website, www.thelibertyloft.com, or on any of our social media channels. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to the podcast, leave a 5-star review, and share the podcast with your friends.